Hey everybody, this is Ruben. We're back with episode 3 for our podcast.
This is Jose, and hopefully you enjoy this podcast.
So our podcast is called Men Redefining Manhood. Welcome to Men Redefining Manhood, a podcast and movement for fathers and men ready to rewrite what it means to be men. This isn't about perfection, it's about presence. It's about healing, not hiding. It's about building men up, not tearing each other down. Let's redefine manhood together.
Yeah, awesome. So, to segue off of that, Ruben, this podcast is going to be about, men being vulnerable. Definitely something that for us is very difficult to do, but I think it's important that we talk about it. Before we get into it, I just want to invite everybody out there watching our podcasts. If you haven't seen the previous podcasts that we've done, feel free to check them out. We have one on father ideals and another one on men and machismo. And so hopefully it's something that can be helpful to you. But anyway, let's get into this podcast today about, men being okay with being vulnerable. Like, I know that for a lot of people, including myself, maybe even yourself, in some areas that may be a struggle because of the image that we carry and that we have to present.
And I think that goes to segue off the last 2 episodes that we had when it comes to being machistas and also being fathers. I know for myself, vulnerability was very hard, expressing my emotion, because, I was, like the last topic that we went over, father ideals, I kind of go back to thinking how I was raised, and how there wasn't really vulnerability. There wasn't really the ability to speak. I was raised where men don't show emotion, men don't show weakness, and I believe that's a lot of us men nowadays. And it's a struggle. And when we do, we get kind of crucified on showing vulnerability. Like, you're a weak man. You're soft. You're who knows what. There's all kinds of different, nasty statements. And it's just sad to see that. But we need to get out of that phase and understand that, all of us deal with different battles. And if we're not vulnerable to either get help or speak to, friends, family about it, there won't be change. We'll continue to bury that emotion, and other nasty outcomes will happen. And, I've been a big testament to that, for a very long time. I never had any kind of emotion. And, nowadays, shoot, I could look at my daughter for too long of a period and, I'll get emotional. So I'm okay with that now. But before I thought it was a sign of weakness, and I don't see it as that anymore. I feel secure with myself to be able to be vulnerable and show emotion, and I could see the difference that it's caused for me, and the weight is not there no more. Absolutely. As it was once before. So
yeah, you hit a very important point. We are not taught to express feeling. We are taught to suppress it, to hold it in, as if expressing feelings or emotions is something bad, right? To the point that, in a lot of households, right, there's punishment for it. Mm-hmm. If you cry, I'm going to give you something to cry for, right? Why are you crying? You're a man, you're not supposed to be crying, shaming you for something that the body naturally does. So how does that now contribute to men, right, not wanting to be vulnerable, right? There's this like assumption and this anticipation that if you are vulnerable, that little voice that you've heard over the years somehow, some way creeps up again, right? And you start to feel like, oh, you know what, if I really say how I feel, what are people going to say? Are they going to, like you said, are they going to crucify me over it? Are they going to shame me? Or are they going to go ahead and interpret it as me being a weak man? which is not necessarily the case, right? I think that there's a significant difference between being vulnerable and expressing yourself and being clear about what you want and being assertive about it, as opposed to being passive, overly passive, and obviously letting people step all over you, right? And I don't know, like, what do you think? How do you think like these types of changes could occur? What can men do? What could we do to start to practice that more?
I think the voicing of it more. I recently seen a social media clip that really stuck out to me. That was kind of like wow, like oh dang, you, especially from such a strong Hispanic guy. There was a video of Canelo, and he's at a boxing thing, and his son gets hit, and his son's getting ready to cry, and one of his people on his camp stops him and is like, "Hey, no, los niños, us men don't cry.
Yeah.
No lloramos."
Yeah.
And he was like, Canelo seen that, and he went over and he's like, whoa, no, I don't want you to think that. Like, if you have an emotion, if you feel sad, if you're hurt, it's okay to cry. It's fine to let out that emotion, because in the long run, it's going to help you. And from somebody that is so predominantly macho, right? Being, a very famous boxer, a very strong man.
How ironic, right? Like you're in a sport, right? In a combative sport that requires a lot of courage, that requires obviously skill, that requires, maybe
getting hit really hard.
Numbing emotions, right?
Yeah.
Because you're hitting somebody else, right? And you're hurting someone else, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the other side of it,
The
right?
other side of it, yeah.
Yeah.
And even the lady that
making that separation.
There was I guess he was doing like an interview, and the lady had mentioned that, like, I seen this video of you, like, where'd that come from? Like, our culture is not like that. Like,
yeah.
we're known to suppress our emotions. Like, los hombres no lloran is very, very big statement. Men don't cry is a very big statement, I think, in the Hispanic culture. And for him, and she's like, where'd that come from? And he's like, that's something that I didn't learn from my father. He's like, that's something that I learned in life. Like, it's okay to express our emotions. It's okay to be, to cry. It's fine. Like, he's like, I cry. It's okay. It's okay to that. When I seen that, I was just like, wow. Like, the more that we have that, the more I think guys are going to be comfortable with looking at this, because, I look at this guy like, wow, this is, like you said, in very predominant sport where you do have to kind of hide your emotion, because the hits that these players, these boxers take, can be, you make you probably want to cry.
Right.
So looking at that, it was just like, wow, it was eye opening. It was like, wow, like, okay, so it's okay for me not to be as, powerful as a man he is, to be able to take hits and be okay with showing emotion. Like, it's okay. And also being a cultural thing, it made me really think dang, it's okay too, because sometimes I'm like, well, why am I getting emotional about this? Like,
right.
Why am I being so vulnerable about this situation? But in my marriage, I've gotten praise from my wife about it. Like, she's like, I love that you're there emotionally for our kids, like, especially our son.
Mm-hmm.
I love that you're there for him. I love that you show our daughter it's okay for guys to cry. It's okay to show that emotional side of you. And you've never had that before. So she's like, I'm appreciative of seeing that when you do that with our children. That's a very big, she's like, that's very even bigly attractive thing. And I was like, what the heck? I didn't think that before. I thought she would take it like, this weak guy, this, crybaby or whatever. But it made me look at it differently. It made me look at it, and it made me realize, like, dang, we need to put this out more. Like, it's okay to, show that emotion. We don't have to bury it. Like,
Yeah.
I think nowadays, in the time for we're in, there's a lot of stuff that's changing. So we have to be conform with the time.
Absolutely. I remember, when I was growing up, when my parents divorced, I was about 10 when they separated. I was about 10. They later divorced, into my early teen years. And I remember being very angry. And because I had been taught, to not show or express emotion, I didn't want to be vulnerable, right? I didn't want to show myself or be that teenager that, was going through something. So the opposite occurred. I became very aggressive. I became very short, and I was very quick, to want to fight other kids and stuff as an outlet. What ended up happening what transpired over the years was the complete opposite. That as I began to learn that emotions are healthy, they're part of who we are as humans, and that if you learn to express them in a healthy way, they provide so much relief, peace, and comfort that you can take on many, many situations and be able to deal with them in a way that's healthy, positive, and create positive outlets, so that you don't find yourself resorting to those unhealthy and dysfunctional ways of dealing with it, right? So I think that's what happens, as men. The vulnerability comes from not knowing how to express emotion, not having the trust to express emotion, and the fear that if you do, that someone will shame you, ridicule you for doing it, even though it's the healthy and the right thing to do, right? And if men can learn to do that, if men can understand that, being vulnerable is okay, and being able to express emotion, as long as you do it in a healthy and positive way, it's okay. I think the contrary happens. You actually end up gaining respect, like you mentioned, right? Your wife actually appreciating and respecting you for being, emotionally connected to your kids and so forth. I think that people actually end up respecting you for that. Mm-hmm. And without you knowing, what you do is, all of a sudden, you create a very different pattern moving forward, not only for yourself, but maybe like for your kids, for your grandkids, right? And it becomes the right thing to do. I think that's I think it's a good way to go.
Yeah, I know. And for me, like, I always think of it like, teaching the emotional regulation was something that I was trying to teach myself, because a lot of times I would catch myself feeling, these different rays of emotions, different times, feeling shame, feeling guilt, feeling sad. And every time I felt like that, I would get angry with myself. Like, why do I feel like that? Like, stop it. Kind of like in my head, like, why are you dealing with that? But then I noticed, all the conflict that it caused. And I was like, no, I want to be outside of that. I want to change that. So I worked with my son a lot on it. Mm-hmm. And I recall, giving him voice, like what we talked about last week, giving him voice. And I recall the first time that he kind of like checked me on something. He's like, Dad, like, really? Are you like being like in your feelings about it? And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. And my machismo, my pride wanted to get in the way, and sure. I felt ashamed, like, dang, like, what do you mean? And then when I actually sat back and I looked at it, I'm like, okay, I'm teaching him this, and yeah, am I being,
absolutely
too much about it? And really looking at it and finding a balance was very difficult, because it's like something that I want to teach myself, but also teach as well. Sure. And it was hard, to find that calm balance. But we're human. It's difficult, especially when there's a lot of factors that come into play, and it's a lot of stuff that I teach in my day-to-day job, the emotional regulation portion. I always tell people, think before you speak. Take a few steps back. Think, how am I feeling in the moment right now? Am I angry? Am I upset? Am I feeling sad? Do I feel shame? how am I going to feel, and how is that going to come out when I react to something that I want you to do or something that, you know, I dislike. So it's difficult, you know,
Yeah.
even for, you know, adults, kids. So, you know,
And even paying attention to like those subtle symptoms in you that are attached to vulnerability and fear, you know, because those, you know, I think all of us at some point in time experience them. You know, when we feel vulnerable, you know, we might be afraid, and when we're afraid, right, we may be nervous. We may have you know, the famous butterflies in our stomach, right? And in a way, have this invisible wall before us that we find very difficult to break through, to be able to reach that space of vulnerability to express what we need to express in the moment, right? It's almost like, you know, that wall in between is the should I not, but what if this, what if that, what, you know, like, oh no, right? And it's this wall with all of that writing on it, that at some point in time, you know, you have to take that risk, and you have to say, you know what, let me break this wall down. Who cares about the what ifs? Who cares about the, you know, what they're gonna say? Who cares about the, you know, let me go for it and let's see what happens, right? And it isn't until you do that then you come to the realization that it brings relief, and that you are more likely to get a very opposite response to what you were thinking, right? In other words, it's probably the anxiety in us that lead us to believe that people might respond a certain way.
Yeah.
And then we come to find out, wait a minute, they didn't respond the way I was thinking. And I actually feel relieved being able to express what I had in me for so long, that maybe this is what I'm gonna continue doing, you know?
Yeah. I'm telling you, when I experienced it with my wife, I was just like, when she's like, I love that about you, like, that's even highly attractive. I was like, what the heck? I'm thinking in my mind, like, oh wow, like, for so long I thought you were gonna look at me like this, you know, like a weak man, like, oh, he doesn't got it together. Like, when she told me that, it just gave me a sense of relief, like, okay, like, dang, okay. And she's like, remember, we're a team, like, you know, I want you to be okay, and I don't want you to carry that weight. Like, I get it. It could be difficult. It could be difficult as a parent. It could be difficult as a man. There's a lot of expectations that you have. I get that. Hearing her voice, that caused me to realize, like, okay, like, dang, how many other guys are not hearing this and that are struggling and maybe don't have that person in their life to be able to tell them? And that's why, you know, I wanted to start this podcast, and it was interesting the way that it had came up. And it just, there's a lot of stuff personally as a man that I've gone through that I want to be able to teach other guys, because, you know, I constantly think, like, how many other of us men are going through this?
Absolutely.
And are not being reassured, or not, you know, being told it's okay to be vulnerable, it's okay to show emotion, you're not going to be, you know, a weak man if you do it.
Yeah.
You know, it has to be normalized for people to have the outcome and have that sense of, I'm telling you, it felt like a huge weight, like,
yeah. Absolutely. You know, here's what's ironic, right? And I'm gonna pitch it this way, and hopefully, you know, our listeners can either relate or understand what I'm about to say. The idea of you know, holding in your feelings and not being vocal about or expressing how you feel in the moment or about certain situations in life, a lot of it has to do with the expectation that society puts on us as men, on top of that culture, right? And why do I say that? Because men are expected to function a certain way. Men are expected to spearhead, right? Any forward movement with family, with work, with providing, and so forth, to a certain extent, right? But at the same time, the side of being vulnerable, the side of being human, to a certain extent, disappears. And why do I say that? because the one man that told me, which is my father, right, to not cry, that men don't cry, and you know, if you cry, I'm gonna give you something to cry for. At the age of 88 years old now, I see him breaking down and crying himself. And because I'm in a place now where I'm able to understand that it's okay to be vulnerable, it's okay to express emotion, I'm able to allow him to be okay and to feel normal about it, right? Without being shamed, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what it does for me, it teaches me that, you know what, that same man that is now crying has come to accept that it was just part of a cultural belief system and part of society's way of pushing this on us, rather than being human. Now that he's coming, right, and he's at this stage of his life and he's realized, wait a minute, you know what, I'm human too, I'm in pain too, I hurt too, I'm crying too. It's okay, right? And so we have to, you know, I think that's a great lesson, because can you imagine, right, not being in a place of being able to connect and relate, or being able to tolerate or normalize or support my father in a moment when he's emotional, breaking down, and he's crying? What would that look like, right? Would I be like, wow, my dad is weak? Would I be like, wow, you know what, I can't stand this, let me walk away? What would that look like, right? If I wasn't in the space now of being able to say, you know, like, it's okay to be human, it's okay to feel this way, you know, it's okay to, you know.
There's a lot of people that don't know how to.
Yeah.
You know, it's a struggle.
Yeah.
To see somebody. You know, I remember the first time also when I seen my father cry, I was like, what the heck? I was like, in my mind, I thought, este hombre that's supposed to be the strong man that would always tell me, los hombres no lloran, is crying about this type of situation right now. Like, are we for it? Like,
Yeah.
wait a minute. But then getting to speak with him and talking to him and seeing him in a different light and giving him that opportunity to be vulnerable. And we had a very, very, very hard conversation, and he told me about his past, and he's told me about what he'd been through, and I'm like, Dad, this is why you feel this way. Like,
Yeah, and it's okay.
it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. Like, we all go through hard stuff, and you know,
Yeah.
it's okay to show this emotion, Dad. It's fine. And you know, we sat there and we cried together, and I'm just like, wow, I never thought of the day that it would happen. I never thought the day I thought he was gonna die, you know, speaking that los hombres no lloran, you know?
Right.
But seeing that, it put me in a different perspective, and I'm like, this is something that I have to teach my son too. I remember the first time I seen him wanting to get emotional. It was during like his season of basketball and stuff like that. I seen him wanting to get emotion. And I went into the room right here and I was like, let it go. Let it go. It's okay to show that emotion. It's okay to be vulnerable. And he cried, and he's just like, I could see this sense of relief. I'm like, it's okay, son. Like, it's okay to show emotion. Like, all that, what we see on social media and what you hear, that men aren't supposed to show emotion, that's the stupidest thing one could think, man. I said, because, you know, what sense of feeling do you have now? He said, I feel relieved that it feels weird. Like, I don't feel that knot in my throat anymore.
Yes.
I don't feel, you know, I don't feel the way that I was feeling a minute ago. You know, the sense of fear, the sense of, you know, shame. I don't feel that, Dad. Like, he's like, this is weird. I'm like, it's okay, man. This is a huge breaking point.
Absolutely.
Like, you know.
Yeah, and vulnerability comes in. You know, I think when men learn to express their emotions, right, they're able to tackle vulnerability in different aspects of life, right? Because, you know, vulnerability doesn't just come in expressing your emotions. Vulnerability comes in relationships, in your job place, right?
Yeah.
It comes in who you are in the community, who you are with your neighbors. Like, there's vulnerability, there's different levels of vulnerability. And, you know, if you're well-rounded and you're able to connect with people at different levels, life is just very different.
Yeah, like I had a recent vulnerability moment at work with one of my clinical supervisors. I was telling her how I was feeling about, certain aspects of my job and certain aspects of my internship, and feeling like unsure about stuff. And before, I was like, either I get it done or I'm going to find a way to get it done. I'm not going to talk to anybody about it. I'll do it, because that's something that, I go back to, that my father instilled me, to be the hardest worker in the room. Like, do what you got to do. Like, focus on what you got to focus on.
Mm-hmm.
And I recall my supervisor telling me, she's like, Ruben, you're doing amazing. Like, you've only been here for a short period of time and you're doing great. And like the conversation we had earlier, she was telling me, like, once you're done with school, when you're done with what you're doing, we want to see you grow within this company and expand and possibly look at clinically overseeing a department. And I'm like, huh? But I don't think I would have got that if I wasn't vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
So I think also vulnerability is going to open a lot of doors to show growth for me. And I've seen it, in my personal life, and now I'm seeing it in my professional life, where it's just like, it's eye-opening. It's like, dang, like, this is all it took. Like, this is all it took for me to get out of that comfort zone and say, like, okay, let's do this. Let's let's see where it goes.
Yeah. Well, and like, I want to throw something in there. When we're able to express emotion, right, and we throw the fear out the window of becoming vulnerable, we become human, right? Mm-hmm. Even though we're human, but we become human in the eyes of others, right? Yeah. And especially those that maybe see you, right? Just like we've talked about our fathers, right? Thinking that they would never get to a point of showing emotion. How did we see them? We saw them as superheroes. We saw them as that strong person, that unbreakable, that, right, bulletproof person, like nothing, right? And then the minute we see our fathers, being vulnerable, showing emotion and everything, now all of a sudden, at least on my end, right, it's like I see my dad for who he is as a man, as a human, that's gone through life, that has suffered as well, and that's dealing with some challenging moments in his life at his current age, right? And so I think people get to see that in us as well, right? That when we do that,
For me, it showed me a lot of more compassion towards him.
Sure.
Because for a very long time, I kind of like demonized him. I was angry with him for a very long time. Like, why do you act like this, Dad? Right. Like, why are you such an ass? Like, why are you so mean? Like, why be like that? And when he did that, it just made me look at him and made me realize, like, dang, you're human just like me.
Yeah. Like, and instead of allowing you to connect with him, right, it was creating a barrier and distancing you, right?
Yeah, because like I said, for a very long time, I despised him, and I wanted to be complete opposite of him. And I've told him, and when we had a lot of hard conversations, it really made me look at it differently, especially hearing what he went through, and it gave me a sense of more compassion towards him. And when he cried, it was just like, oh damn, like, you're human too. Like, it made me really like humanize him, and like, you're not this evil, nasty person that I thought of. Like, wow, like, it really eye-opening. That's all I can say, eye-opening. It was just like, dang, like, I hope, one day when my son becomes, a grown man with children himself and being a father, he could see that, like, dang, I'm thankful my dad taught me this lesson. Because it took a long time. My dad is 70-something years old, and it took a very long time for him to get to that point. Like I said, I thought he would die saying, "Men don't cry." And it was just like, dang, man, it made me look at life a lot differently.
Absolutely, you know. And I think, you know, it's a good way to you know, to transition out of this episode, right? That being vulnerable doesn't mean you're weak, and expressing emotion doesn't mean that you can't succeed. Doesn't mean that you can't, you know, be in control. Doesn't mean that you're less than, right? No, you know, expressing emotion, being vulnerable means that you're human, just like anybody else out there that is vulnerable as well, right? And that anything can happen to any of us.
Yeah.
That's the reality of it, right? Like in life, none of us, whether you're a man, whether you're a woman, whether you know, you consider yourself, you know, to identify with a different gender or whatnot, sexual orientation, etc. None of us can escape the vulnerability of what life can throw at us. That's, you know, that's the reality of it, right? Like, we're all here for a moment. We're here to experience what, you know, life has to offer, and, you know, how we perceive it and enjoy it or express it or whatnot, and then
we're all guaranteed to not
that's it.
wake up the next day, so take advantage of it.
Right? So, but in any case, yeah, you know, I think it was a great, you know, a great topic to discuss, and you know, for all of you guys listening to us, you know, hopefully it was very helpful to you. Again, you know, continue to check in with us. We're going to be putting some podcasts, more podcasts and topics out there, you know, relevant to men and the struggles that men face. And while we finish the podcast, what do you think is one thing that is important that maybe we can touch base on during the next episode of podcast that you think men out there, you know, are having a challenging time with?
I think going back to like expectations, you know, the shame if we don't, I guess, meet the expectation that we have in our mind, because you know
so the fear of failure,
yeah,
maybe,
the fear of failure, the fear of, you know, not doing enough, you know, achieving a certain goal. Like, it's okay. I think in life, you know, we can always reinvent ourselves. I didn't think I would be 40 years old in a master's program, and I'm doing it. And,
absolutely.
you know, I feel like I'm striving in it, and it's like I'm reinventing that portion of myself. So
absolutely.
I think that's an area that we need to really look at, and you know, I think it'd be a good next topic to discuss.
Definitely, let's go for it. Next topic, let's go ahead and talk about, you know, the fear of failure, and, you know, the expectations, or the high expectations that we set for ourselves, and how that may set us up for feeling like we failed, even though we might have actually succeeded.
Yes.
So yeah, so we'll see you guys next time.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to say before we finish up? Or?
No, just I appreciate you guys. Check out our other episodes, and know that we're going to be putting more content out there. So look forward to hearing from us more.
All right, sounds good. Have a good one, everyone.
Take care.
Take care until next time.
Bye-bye.